This from Jean, who says, why don't we find out more about the backgrounds of those coming to the UK? That way we can either confirm or obliterate the arguments that these are economic migrants. I think this would at least inform the wider argument about who we are helping. I think there's some truth in that, isn't there? That if you absolutely thought that everybody that you were assisting was coming from a war-torn, war-torn country, tyrannical regime, a place where inevitable doom is coming your way to you and your family, if we were satisfied that that was the case, and we had, understandably, a need for evidence for that kind of thing, if we had that reassurance that the people that we are helping are people that absolutely, some of the most desperate people on earth, I think that maybe does change the narrative. At the moment, there is very much a big belief out there that that isn't what we're dealing with here. And there may be some people who've come from Syria. There might be some people who've escaped the wicked Taliban or ISIS somewhere. But there's also going to be people who've come from Iran or Eritrea, places we're not at war with, places where there is no war. And many will say, these are individuals who've decided they want to change countries. And nobody's blaming them for that, but that's not quite how immigration policy works. We're taking your calls on this, and we'll go back to that shortly. Boats carrying migrants across the Channel could be turned back from the UK if personally approved by the Home Secretary Priti Patel. The government has authorised Border Force officials to use this new tactic, but only in limited circumstances. I would take that to mean no circumstances at all. However, France is likely to oppose the plan, believing it is dangerous. The French Interior Minister said safeguarding human lives at sea takes priority. Rising numbers of migrants have been crossing the Channel in recent months. So far this week, 1,500 people have crossed by boat. Do you trust Priti Patel to sort this out? Let's speak with two people on this issue. Ivon Sampson, who's solicitor at Privatus, who's got 20 years' experience in advising individuals on immigration requirements and the like, and Stephen Wolfe, director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity, former MEP as well. Afternoon to you both. Stephen, first of all, has Priti Patel got this one right? Afternoon.
Well, she certainly got her opinion that you should be able to turn the boat around correct. Whether the process of her being able to actually achieve that is going to be a little bit more difficult. Can I just point out two ways there? Why is she able to return boats back? She's had plenty of legal advice to the Home Affairs Committee that says, for example, the Safety of Life at the Sea Convention, SOLAS, provides legal ability for a government to return a boat where there is the primary target of the boat is illegal migrants or breaching immigration rules. So she has the opportunity to do that. And secondly, you wanted evidence about the numbers of people coming over, whether they're economic migrants or asylum.
Yeah, it was a question that came up from one of our texters on that very point.
Well, the World Bank in its report last year on migration stated in relation to Afghanistan and other countries, but primarily Afghanistan, that now 2/3 of all of those leaving Afghanistan are economic migrants, whereas 1/3 are asylum, and that number has shifted dramatically. And the UN, in its annual statistics report, it's a huge report they do every year now, said the same sort of numbers. So globally, out of the 275 million people who are now economic migrants out there.
Ivon Sampson, you're a solicitor. This is your area. I mean, firstly, on that same question I put to Stephen, do you trust Priti Patel? I think I know the answer.
Well, look, it's headline-grabbing news, political motivation behind it. The answer is no, I don't trust Priti Patel, because she could have actually had put into measures, policies to address many of those coming across the Channel. Before we left Brexit, we were members of Eurodac. And what that enabled Priti Patel to do, and she did quite successfully, the Home Office did do that, is return those asylum seekers who'd previously claimed asylum elsewhere. We could do that. Since leaving Brexit, we can't. And not a single person who's come across the Channel since we've left the European Union has been returned. Not one. That's the first point. Second point is that, look, we're members of the 51 Refugee Convention. We're members of it. So if somebody claims asylum, we have a duty, an international duty, to hear their case, to assess their case and make a decision. Now, my friend said that many of them are economic migrants. Well, that may well be the case, but you still have to hear their claim. The problem is we're not taking enough refugees. That's the problem.
We're not taking
You see,
enough.
No, we're not. We're simply not. I mean, did you know that there are 14 million children refugees around the world presently? Amnesty International figures. Do you know how many we took as a country in 2019?
Go on.
3,900. 3,900 is what we took.
So you think we should be taking more? Let me just put that point, Stephen Wolf.
No.
I mean, if we are looking at this from I think Ivan's coming from a humanitarian position there as much as anything else. We're not 3,000 out of millions.
No, let's look at this correctly. I agree with Ivan that we are members of the convention in 51, and that once they arrive here, they have to go through the asylum process. But in relation to the numbers, we had nearly 37,000 asylum applications in 2020. We have 110,000 applications that are currently outstanding, costing the UK circa 4.4 billion a year in relation to those. So if you're looking at the numbers coming over here, they are quite significant in what we've had each year. And they are much higher than what we've been having historically. It's not as big as what happened during the Blair government, where we had in 1 year 110,000, I admit. But if you're looking on the numbers coming through at the moment, we have a city the size of Basingstoke who have made asylum applications or waiting for them in the past 10 years.
Isn't that the point, Ivan, that there are just practicalities here that mean that you can't just say, here's an open door policy for every migrant?
Well, either we're members of the convention or we're not. I mean, that's the key thing. And if we're members, we've got to comply with our international obligation. Look, there's almost 26 million refugees around the world. And recently, we've had conflicts all over the world. That's one of the reasons that we're having this influx. So I'm afraid, also, the Refugee Convention doesn't mean that a person has to claim asylum in the first port of call. It doesn't require it. A person claim asylum.
Why would you not? Just explain, Ivan. Sorry to interject. Just on that point, and I don't ask this as a mischievous question. It's a genuine question. If you were escaping a terrible set of circumstances, deadly set of circumstances, then instinctively you would go to the first country of safety, surely. And if
not necessarily.
why would you not do that? Why would you not do that?
Well, I'll tell you why. Because we drafted the European Convention on Human Rights. It was we who drafted.
We seem to have just lost Ivan's line for a second there. We'll get you back, Ivan. I mean, Stephen, can you respond to that? Because this comes up time and time again about claiming asylum in the first safe country. And then I speak to lawyers like Ivan. They say, no, that isn't the case. People think it is the case. It actually demonstrably isn't in law. How do you read that particular tricky area of this debate?
Well, I actually disagree with Ivan on this. What is clear is that the UN Refugee Convention does not state where asylum seekers should apply for asylum, but it doesn't say you also have to apply in the first place. What it does say is that you must apply having left from a territory where life or freedom was threatened. And this is where the issue is trying to be expanded. Is your life or freedom threatened when you've arrived in France or Germany or Italy or Spain? Which is where the issue comes from. What's being pushed by human rights lawyers at the moment is to argue that, yes, if I'm an asylum seeker from Afghanistan or Syria, my life is threatened in France because the police beat us up and push us back into the camps. And so therefore we can apply this particular section of the UN Convention. So that's very clear out there. The law does not say that you should apply, but it does not say that you shouldn't. And it doesn't mean that they can come to another country like ours because of it. They have to be frightened in the country they arrive in.
In a nutshell, Ivan is back with us. Ivon Sampson, solicitor at Privatus. Just explain then, what process would you put in place if the current one is clearly failing? We all agree with that. The process you want would encourage more people to come here. What would that look like?
Well, look, we need a global immigration policy, a joined-up approach, globally, I think, regulated by the UNCHR, which is massively underfunded. No, each country needs to take their fair share of asylum seekers. And what I would do is, if somebody came over to the UK, yes, I would not allow them entry into the UK. I would not do that. I would take them to a safe place, designated, where they could claim asylum. When their asylum application had been considered and decided, then they would then be distributed equally amongst countries in the world willing to take them. Look, Pakistan has more asylum seekers than any other country. Over a million people have sought refugees in Pakistan. We have a fraction.
It's a big old place, right?
No, absolutely. But this is the point. And also, you need safe passages of entry for people to claim asylum. Otherwise, you will continue to get this. The asylum numbers are dictated by the weather and not government policy. That's not a good state of affairs.
What should those numbers? What should those numbers look like, Ivon? I know it's hard to sort of specifically say, but
I've done some number crunching. I think it's about 100,000 a year we need to take.
We
about
should
100,000 a year.
Okay, Stephen Wolf, 100,000 a year.
Well, that means that you're going to have to accommodate them all, feed them, and raise income tax to cover the 4.4 billion that 100,000 would cover at the moment over a 10-year period. So if you're looking at those numbers, you're going to look at income tax increases of 1 or 2% for everybody in the country, and see what happened when when the complaints of national insurance was raising yesterday. This is huge numbers, huge costs, and we are the 5th most dense country in the world, unlike places like Iran and Pakistan, who do host the largest numbers of migrants and asylum seekers globally.
Can I make a final point?
Please do, Ivon.
70% of the world refugees come from 5 countries. 70%. So if we tackle the problem of those refugees, countries like Afghanistan, Syria, Myanmar, South Sudan, these are the countries where the bulk of refugees are coming from. We need to address the problems in those countries to stop them wanting to leave in the first place.
But would you acknowledge, Ivon, that it was very, very hard for a country to assimilate 100,000 people every year?
Now, look, I think the problems are not permanent. They're temporary because they're coming from conflict around the world. It's because of conflict is the reason people are leaving conflict zones. So you need to this won't be forever, but at the moment, yes, I do believe temporarily we need to take 100,000 a year.
Okay.
Otherwise, you're going to continue getting refugees across the channel.
Ivon, thank you. Stephen Wolf, thank you. Stephen Wolf, Director of the Centre for Immigration and Economic Prosperity. He's a former MEP. Ivon Sampson, solicitor at Privatus, years of experience in advising individuals on immigration requirements for global relocation, particularly with a focus on the areas that he discussed there. An extra 100,000. I can hear people across the country spitting out their tea as they heard that last statement. How do you respond to what you've just heard? 0344 499 1000. You're listening to Talk Radio. It's 1:45. Online, on